Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. I'm Mark Stein in for Tucker Tonight. Illegal immigration is turning into a crisis across the country. And it's not because we lack laws, but because those laws are being ignored. According to new statistics from the Department of Homeland Security, dozens of gang members, including members of MS-13, are prowling the streets because sanctuary policies let them go free. 2/3 of the released gang members were in California. Apparently that state's only problem with illegal immigrant criminals, it seems, is that they don't have the right to vote yet. Meanwhile, in Massachusetts, an illegal immigrant working as an Uber driver raped a passenger and has now fled back to Ghana. And in Washington, President Trump's Supreme Court pick, Neil Gorsuch, just sided with the court's liberals to strike down a law ordering the deportation of immigrants who commit violent crimes. Raul Reyes is an attorney and immigration advocate, and he joins us. This rape victim, she's made her name public,
right.
Emily Murray, because she now basically has no redress from the courts.
Right, unfortunately.
What's the deal with that? Who's to blame?
Well, you know, when we look at the facts in this particular case, it is really, honestly, a big mess all around. First question, why was Uber even employing this undocumented person?
Well, the answer is
number one. So
they employ a lot of illegal aliens.
Well, that in itself, even I know Uber employees are considered contractors, but still, we all know anytime you get a job in this country, you're supposed to fill out your documentation. So that's the first problem. Second problem is when they set when they set the bail for this case, for a rape case, they only set it for $10,000. That is, anyone in the legal field will tell you that's unbelievably low, especially for foreign national. It should have been at least $100,000.
But it's large for Massachusetts, because only last year a Massachusetts judge gave bail of $2,500 to a Dominican gangbanger who'd raped a Boston College student, and he then fled.
Right. So
this is becoming a pattern.
So they cannot say they were totally unaware of these type of circumstances, especially with foreign nationals. And the third problem goes to the whole question of detainers. In this case, there's been some he said about who sent the detainer and who did not follow up on it. But this is the bottom line of the problem, is that, remember, an immigration detainer, by definition of the statute, is a voluntary request. It's asking the police to, or whoever is the local law officials involved, to hold this person for ICE. In Massachusetts, because it's this sanctuary jurisdiction, they did not do that. But you know what? Even if Massachusetts were not a sanctuary jurisdiction, that's a problem, because ICE detainers are voluntary. If ICE really wants to get someone, if they want to take someone off the streets and they think they have reason to do so, they need to get a criminal warrant, which requires a finding of probable cause.
But in this case, in other words, you need probable cause for someone who is for a warrant for someone who's not even in the country. But just let's not let these Massachusetts authorities off the hook that easily. This detainer was sent to the local police, who then sent it to the district court, and the district court basically declined to pass it on to the county attorney. Isn't this the culture in Massachusetts of a sanctuary state, where in effect this guy, like the guy last year, we're getting to this where illegal immigrant Uber drivers who commit rape, they're not quite a separate category of crime, but they're getting that way. Just like the guy last year, they're treated differently from, say, a Massachusetts native, some guy who got off the boat at Plymouth Rock would if he
and it's not necessarily the culture in Massachusetts. What it is, it's the state law, because in 2015, the Massachusetts Supreme Court, they ruled that statewide, no matter what local police or law enforcement officials believe or think, statewide, that these local jurisdictions cannot hold people while awaiting ICE detainers, because they were concerned about potential Fourth Amendment concerns. So even, for example, even if there wasn't this back and forth, even if the local officials had wanted to, that would have broken the law.
How does the Fourth Amendment apply to someone who shouldn't even be in the country that has the Fourth Amendment?
Well, the way that the Massachusetts court applied it, they were looking at, they defined detention as an arrest, and the arrest ends when the local jurisdiction releases them. And under their view, this is their thinking, if you hold them again for another 48 hours, which is what detainers do, that constitutes a second arrest, and therefore that's where you have the Fourth Amendment concerns about unreasonable searches and seizures. But that's their reasoning.
So their reasoning is that there's 7 billion people on the planet, and if this guy who's back in Ghana has a pal who'd like to come to Massachusetts and rape a woman, that pal in Ghana knows he's covered by the Fourth Amendment, even though he's in a country that doesn't have the Fourth Amendment.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I would say what I think it's important to know about detainers, what I think everyone should know, whether you're in favor of sanctuary cities and jurisdictions or not. ICE issues about 100,000 detainers a year, okay? Of that number, in 2015, which is the year where we have the fullest statistics, only 61% were not followed up on in any way. There was no call to the local jail. They didn't show up. Nobody, arrived to pick them up. Only 15%, and that's 1/5, actually resulted in a deportation. So that goes back to the notion that if ICE were serious about getting these people, and Homeland Security were taking it seriously, they would get the criminal warrant, because then the local jurisdictions, there's no belief system, there's no Massachusetts court decision. It's the law that they must hold them.
Well, thank you for explaining that the detainer is, in effect, just meaningless bureaucratic mumbo-jumbo.
It's a request.
It's
just a request.
Yeah, that's right. Request. Voluntary. Great. If you think it's bad here, you should see what's going on in European countries that Americans think of as super peaceful. A new story in Politico says that grenade attacks have become a part of daily life in Sweden. Rape and sexual harassment are surging. Hundreds of residents tramped off to join ISIS. And last year in Stockholm, a Muslim extremist murdered 5 people by ploughing his stolen truck into the city's iconic department store. Katie Hopkins is a columnist with Rebel Media. Great to have you with us, Katie. Sweden is in a hell of a state. Basically, people's perception of Sweden is about 40 years out of date now.
That's so true. You know, people still imagine Sweden as this idyllic place, lots of mountains, snow-topped mountains, you know, everybody's skipping down the street with their pigtails. I was there quite recently, and I found it to be a very hostile place indeed. I went to walk the no-go zones. There's about 62 no-go zones now in Sweden, where the police fear to go, where the ambulances can't respond to emergencies, and where fire engines have to be taken by police because the fire engines are attacked. So really the gangs are establishing themselves, they're keeping the police out, and hand grenades, which you can buy for as little as $30, are being used as a kind of warning device for each gang to keep those people out.
Now, you mentioned those no-go zones. Every time we mention these on Fox, the governments in Europe indignantly deny they exist. So we should say they're unofficial no-go zones. I went to one of them in Rosengård, where the sort of lone police station is like an armed fortress. You can dial, nobody's home. If you ever had to actually go to the police for anything, you can't get in the building. Sweden has undergone it was basically an ethnically homogenous society in which Swedes are predicted to become a minority in their own country by 2050. That's an extraordinary demographic transformation.
They took, you know, there's a population of about 10 million Swedes, and they are, you know, irritatingly enough, Swedish people are exceptionally good looking, and that really annoys me. But anyway, they took this very perfect population and they brought in 170,000 migrants, and those migrants were from countries that we know about. We know the sorts of things that goes on in those countries, and then we wonder, why is it that Sweden has turned into a place where Swedes themselves are desperate to leave? I hear stories all the time of Swedes that want to get out of Sweden because it's too violent. Norway says it doesn't want to become Sweden. And what really bugs me is the media will not be honest about it. They talk about these individuals, these migrants, they talk about them as the new Swedes. Well, guess what? You can't take Mohammed, stick a blonde wig on him and put a name badge that says Ulf and turn him into a Swede. It doesn't work like that.
No, it's interesting, and it's particularly hard on the women. I mean, I talked to a young lady in Östersund and some girls who'd been sexually assaulted at a pop concert. There's an incredible level of sexual assault going on now in a country that we think of, as I said, as still being far more peaceful than the United States or the UK or most other countries.
Yes, and we should stop thinking that way. You know, that's naive to think that way. We've imported half the Middle East to Sweden, and as a result, the men there particularly are behaving like men in the Middle East. 43% of rapes that happen to children in that country, and it has the second highest rape of any country in Europe. And the great news from all of this, if we look for a positive, is that in September they will have elections, and in September the Liberals will be forced out, and actually the Conservatives and the Swedish UKIP will be in.
We have to leave it there, Katie. Thanks for coming on. 11 Republicans in the House of Representatives have sent a letter to the Justice Department calling for the criminal investigations of, wait for it, James Comey, Hillary Clinton, Andrew McCabe and Loretta Lynch. Fox's chief national correspondent, Ed Henry, has more on that. Ed.
Mark, good to see you. The behind-the-scenes story I'm getting is Attorney General Jeff Sessions still does not appear to be moving quick enough on alleged abuses by the FBI and Justice Department for the liking of top advisors to President Trump. So they've been prodding Republicans on Capitol Hill to jump in. So Congressman Ron DeSantis and 10 other House Republicans have now taken the initiative to send this criminal referral to the FBI Director Chris Wray, to Sessions, and to U.S. Attorney John Huber. Remember, he was tasked by the Attorney General to evaluate whether there needs to be criminal charges for actions like abuse of FISA by Obama officials to spy on the Trump campaign. At the top of their list for potential charges, as you mentioned, Hillary Clinton for using Fusion GPS to disguise payments from her presidential campaign for that anti-Trump dossier, a link not disclosed when top officials got that FISA warrant to spy on former Trump advisor Carter Page. A Clinton aide tells Fox there's no merit to this claim and Republicans must be acting up here because they're scared about the upcoming midterms. That's their view. The criminal referral also targets FBI officials like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Remember, their anti-Trump text messages seem to reveal a bias that helped contribute to the agency's bungling of that probe into Clinton's server. Former FBI Chief James Comey also targeted for signing 3 FISA applications without disclosing the funding from the Clinton camp and the DNC for that dossier, as well as the fact he drafted an exoneration statement months before Clinton's FBI interview. That appears to contradict sworn testimony to Congress, where Comey said he only made the decision to not charge her after she was questioned by the FBI. Comey and his former number 2 at the FBI, Andrew McCabe, also cited for leaks to the media, including charges that classified info got out from the release of those memos that Comey put together. Today, he insisted he did nothing wrong and is confident he will be exonerated. But here's where it gets really interesting. After Comey told The View he believes McCabe is a good person, but the Justice Department Inspector General found that he lied about his leaking, McCabe fired back it's not true and that Comey is simply not being honest. So you've got the former G-men now turning on each other, McCabe and Comey. There's going to be, again, a lot more interesting soon, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ed. I'll believe it when I see it. It may be quicker for Donald Trump to launch a new reality show, Celebrity Chain Gang. I would love to see those guys on it. The Comey Circus, speaking of James Comey, is still on tour and cashing in, and the former FBI director is hitting up The View and the late-night television shows. Wait until you see the bizarre standing ovation he got. That's coming up next on Tucker Carlson Tonight.